So let's move on to the next story, and this is one that you were looking at, Mike, about KillDisk malware.
Yeah, this is an interesting, again, an interesting variant of ransomware. We've seen a lot of ransomware over 2016. As you mentioned, we're expecting to see more of this in 2017. KillDisk is sort of an evolution of a pre-existing malware package that previously would go through and delete a victim's hard drive. So it was a very destructive piece of malware that was used in cyber sabotage type operations, cyber espionage operations, primarily focusing in the industrial sector. There was evidence of this being used in various areas, both in the U.S. and Eastern Europe over the last couple of years. But recently they have evolved this and their operations to take advantage of, what is on track or was on track in 2016 to be the $1 billion a year ransomware industry, if you could term it that. And so now, rather than delete your disk and cause problems, KillDisk is actually encrypting the systems, encrypting the disks as well as any mapped drives of the systems that it infects. And it's demanding a very large decryption fee of 222 bitcoins. So they are particularly targeting the industrial sector at this point, based on the available information that's out there. And this is interesting because you're seeing ransomware start to push into that IoT space, which isn't something that was terribly prevalent that at least I came across in my studies in the past year. It's an interesting evolution of ransomware as a whole, actually, because while banking and individual users and corporate users and things like that certainly have been juicy targets for ransomware, in the latter half of this past year, we've started to see ransomware move into more sensitive market verticals, like healthcare, for example, right? If you start to ransomware encrypt real-time operating, or medical support services and things like that inside of hospital infrastructures and what have you, there's a much more critical impact of that, right? When you start looking at IoT in like the chemical manufacturing vertical or the energy vertical, these are environments that, IoT is that next bow wave, right? Operational technology. There's quite a few challenges there from a security perspective. There's, possibly fewer controls depending on the environment, so it's easier to infect. The impact for infection and encryption is more pronounced, and they have deeper pockets to pay. And so really, this evolution is very interesting in that regard, that they're really kind of going after that vertical.
And this is kind of an evolution because KillDisk, is a lot of us are familiar with, has been used in a lot of nation-state type espionage. It was definitely used, from what I remember, in the Ukraine power grid attack. It was deployed on those machines as part of that. But that was the version that just wiped the disk. So now, like you said, they're kind of saying, well, instead of just wiping it, hey, let's see if we can make it a few extra bucks here. The other thing I thought was interesting here that you brought up is some of these verticals that they're moving into. So, we've seen a lot of the consumer one-off type of victims of ransomware in the past, but I would say in 2016, we saw a lot of healthcare. A lot of industries were being targeted, specifically ones that couldn't afford to have downtime and may not have the best. You would think hospitals would have better recovery procedures, but case in point, they may or may not, or they may not practice those recovery procedures as well as they should. And I think we covered a story late last year about, or just very recently, about the San Francisco municipal rail system that was also targeted. And now that actor was targeting a lot of other construction and business, more targets that were more small enough that they would probably pay, but big enough that they would have the money to pay, kind of thing. Yeah. And they couldn't afford to have downtime there. So interesting that they're trying to pivot this year. A little alarming too. So, like we said, the best thing anybody can do, even if you're just a regular user or a small business, is have good backup procedures for your corporate devices. And then exercise on some regular basis mock recovery procedures. Not necessarily want to kill all your machines, but at least test out the process. Say, well, I'm going to recover these 5 machines from backup today, and we're going to see how it works out and see if it all goes through as expected. Yeah. Because otherwise, when you're in the thick of it and you're not practiced in it, it's going to take longer. And if you do kind of exercise your recovery processes, you're going to be better apt to recover quicker and not have to deal with this kind of stuff. Hopefully, having good preparation can make ransomware kind of a moot point